Summer's here, Jacques, and it is the perfect time to be chopping it up outdoors, cooking-wise.
Yeah, I am all about outdoor cooking now. I am fully committed to wanting to cook like 50% of my meals outside this summer.
This is a special week. I've got the Garden Hermit back on the show.
Good to be back.
Good to be back. We're in a much better situation. We used to share one mic.
Yeah.
And now we have two mics, and we actually have a couple cameras because there's a new channel out called The Beet.
Very exciting.
And that is the new name of the Epic Gardening podcast. We're renaming it The Beet, a podcast for plant lovers. Jacques, no better person to have on than the Hermit himself.
I do love plants, and I love talking about plants. So I'm excited to get into this.
Well, let's talk about the summer garden. And, as we record this, it is midsummer.
Yeah. And it feels like it too.
And it feels like midsummer. It is upwards of 90 Fahrenheit right now. The garden's cranking. My stuff's a little behind, I have to say. Like my tomatoes and peppers, at least, are behind because of our weird spring.
Yeah, this was actually a very interesting year for us because I don't think we could have really predicted it the way it came. It was very cold in the beginning, but we also had a lot of rain. So I think both you and I had more fungal diseases than we've ever had.
Yeah.
And then, of course, just now, like this week is the first like truly hot week where I could feel like it's actually hot.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Yeah, so the plants were a little bit slow, but now they're really starting to grow quickly. And I think we're going to have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah, what's crazy is I was gone. I was out of town I was a groomsman in a wedding, a very fun wedding. It was actually at a hay farmer's farm.
Hey,
so a little touch, a little touch. But yeah, I took a little mulch home. But regardless, when I came back, the peppers were good 3 inches taller in about 7 days, like no joke.
Yeah.
Because once the heat comes in at the first time in the season, the plants respond in kind. Like the first time it gets hot, like you said, I noticed the corn's going crazy, peppers going crazy, tomatoes going crazy.
Yeah. And I was really grateful that I got my tomatoes in a little bit later than usual. So I was like, if it's going to be cold, because last year I think both you and I started our tomato seeds too early.
Way too early.
Yeah. So this year we were both like, let's like push it to February, March.
Yeah.
And I think that really paid off because we didn't waste any time with that cold weather. But now the plants are fully established and mine are like littered in tomatoes.
Yours
like
are cranking.
Dozens and dozens and dozens.
I would say I'm about 2 weeks behind you because what my play is I saw the forecast.
Yeah.
And the forecast basically said in Feb and March, it's going to be a very cloudy next month and a half. And so I was like, okay, well, like you said, we started too early last year. I said, I'm going to start actually too late this year on purpose. And what that ended up having happen is basically what's happening to me now, where my tomatoes are still yet to be fully ripe. I got a couple sun golds off just yesterday. And we're talking, this is mid to late July right now, guys, as we record this. So keep that in mind. But for us, our hot season, to be honest, can be August, September.
Yeah. So
I sort of go, probably nailed it.
Yeah. Because right now, like, of course, when you grow stuff like tomatoes, like if it gets over 95, I think even 90, the flowers just can't set fruit.
Can't set fruit.
So we want to get ahead of that, have fruit starting to form, and then ride through the heat wave while they ripen, basically. Yeah.
And then I think there's something to be said, like last year with the tomatoes being started so early, they sort of just had to like wait around for a while, and that just wasn't conducive to healthy plants.
No.
I think especially with your crankers is what I'll call it, I guess. your peppers, your tomatoes, the stuff that once it goes in, it's going to produce for a while. To me, you have to spend a lot more time in the transplant phase. Like you have to nail the transplant phase. Otherwise, like, I don't know, if you were to throw some sunflower seeds in the ground or even like something like corn, just put it in. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But your pumpers you really need to
the
get
crankers and pumpers.
Crankers and pumpers. So varieties wise, you do anything different this year?
So this year, every year I try to do a little bit different. So last year I didn't grow enough of my favorites. Mm-hmm. So I only had like, I think 2 Cherokee purples, 1 sun gold. This year I have 3 sun golds, 2 Cherokee purples, and 2 Cherokee carbons.
Oh, nice.
So they're basically the same, but like a hybrid. And I'm really happy about that because now I actually have enough of the fruit that I truly look forward to eating. Because everything else is fun, but half the varieties I grew last year, I won't grow again. And I don't even remember their names.
Right.
Because it's not like they were bad. They just weren't our favorites.
They just weren't top for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, for me, every season, we talk about this every time we do a podcast, but for me, I expand and contract depending on the type of plant.
Yes.
And so like last year, I want to say was the year that we got a bunch of chilies from Jim Duffy, Refining Fire.
Time is so weird.
It might have been the year prior, but either way, my peppers are expanding yet again. So I think it was last year they contracted. So I grew like 60 varieties in 2021.
That's right.
Then I grew like maybe 15, and now I'm back to growing maybe like 20, 25. But tomatoes, I'm in a contraction year where I have the new trellis, which you can check out on our YouTube channel. We had a new video. But there's only, I think, 10, and some of them are a grafted versus non-grafted comparison. Right. So it's the same plant. So I have San Marzanos, grafted, non-grafted, right? I think the only caveat is that in the front yard, I did a bit of a copycat on what you have in your garden. You have that determinate sort of cluster. I did the same idea, but I did it in one of our Birdie's 8-in-1 original beds so that it could, I don't know, be a little bit more contained.
Sure.
That's like my sauce zone because I wanted to separate that from the main sort of tomatoes.
Don't even count my determinate tomatoes towards my total tomato count. Because it's like, those are getting processed. Yeah. Like those are bonus to me almost.
Yeah.
But for slicers, I want to make sure I have consistent slicers all throughout the year.
Consistent slicers, I think.
Cherries too, of course.
I just started 2 days ago a fitness challenge called the 75 Hard Challenge, which is minimum 2 workouts a day, all sorts of different rules and regulations. But needless to say, there's times where there's like too much abundance in the garden and you're like, okay, like, can I really eat all this? I got to give some away. I can't anymore because the rules of the challenge, I can't have any sugar. I can't have any alcohol. I can't have any junk food. I have to eat whole foods is my personal rule, which you'd think like, don't you garden, Kevin? Like, isn't that all you eat? Well, I'm also a human being. I like a burrito every now and then. Sure. I like a pizza, you know? And so maybe I like them a little too much. And now I'm going into the garden this summer stoked because I have 73 days left as of this recording of only whole foods.
And they're just starting to crank.
And it's just starting to crank. And so I might be doing tomato and mozz, that kind of thing. We'll have to see if that counts as a whole food. I think like mozzarella is pretty damn close.
Yeah. It's your own rules, right? The only thing I'm overloaded on already is squash. I've already planted more. So
well, here's my play with squash this year. Here's what I did that was the real killer feature. I grew functional squash. So I grew like birdhouse gourd.
Oh, right.
I grew one that I forgot the name of in the front, but I think it's more of a winter squash. So I don't have to deal with it right now. I can just wait, And then I grew the Alaskan giant pumpkin. In memoriam of Gucci, which we buried her underneath that, and we're starting to see a fruit. And I'm gonna, to your point, like I'm gonna try to grow that in a way where maybe 2 fruit are only allowed, and I'm gonna force the rest of the stems to produce roots, and so just create this super plant. And so I'm not gonna have a lot of squash. The one thing I'm failing at right now, I'm curious what yours are doing, is cukes. My cukes are a little bit of a laggard.
This year, actually, oddly enough, the cucumbers have been better than I've ever had. Part of it is I went with like a crazy greenhouse variety. Yeah. Like it's called Katrina, which we went
with a pumper.
Yeah. A pumper, true pumper. Yeah. And so I only bought it because my partner's name is Katrina. Okay. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll get this cucumber because it's her name.
Yeah, sure.
And it turns out it's amazing because it's I'm not going to pronounce any of these right because I'm not a hort person.
Yeah.
But it's gynosis and parthenocarpic. Parthenocarpic. There's an R in there. Yeah. Is that it could set fruit without getting pollinated. Yeah. So it's a female flower. It doesn't need the male.
Yeah.
It's going to make cucumbers no matter what.
So there you go. That's I wouldn't say it's like a big problem with cucumbers, but it's especially if you're like a balcony gardener or something, that's a problem.
And then the other word is that it also just produces predominantly female flowers. So basically it just cranks cucumbers.
Double winner. Yeah, cucumbers. It makes more female flowers. The females don't need the males. You have a children of man situation going on there.
Classic. Awesome. But it was like $28 for a seed pack.
Wait, where'd you get it from?
It was from Johnny's. Yeah. And so I was like, I'll try it out.
Yeah.
But I got the mini pack. So I think I paid like $12 for like 8 seeds.
You are the king of buying extremely expensive seeds.
I'm like, what's the deal? Is it worth it?
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. Most of the time, it's been basically the same.
Well, given the fact that we own Botanical Interest now, we own a seed company. A lot of the reason why that seed is so expensive is because it's small production runs on rare hybridized varieties. Hybrid. So when you have a hybrid, you have the mother and the father line that you're crossing, not really mother-father, but the parent lines you're crossing. And you have to maintain the parent lines to cross. So you're breeding not only the hybrid, but you're actually extending the parentage lines as well. And sometimes actually eventually always they degrade.
They'll drift.
And so you lose varieties. Like that's what's happening, I think, with our sun gold tomatoes right now.
I've heard about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about disease and pest pressure.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's getting better every year.
It is for me.
For some things, for sure. Like, for instance, powdery mildew seems to be a lot less prevalent this year than I'm at least used to.
For me, what I've noticed is my pest pressure's way down. My disease, I'm still seeing like even a little powdery creeping up the base stems of my tomatoes.
That's true. Actually, I have seen that
which is frustrating to see because I really, like I planned my tomato garden out this year in such a way specifically just to avoid disease. It wasn't even anything else.
Yeah.
But to me, what I've noticed is I have no significant pest pressure of any kind.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had some aphids early on, and I attribute most of that to the rain, actually.
Do you really?
Because the soil was so wet that I think the plants like couldn't breathe, and then they get stressed, and then they get aphids.
Yeah, it could be.
But overall, less than I've ever seen before. Like, they're not a problem, I would say. Like, I see maybe a couple on some like my garlic chives, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But it is interesting about the powdery mildew because people are always like, if you water your plants from above, you're going to get mildew. Only drip irrigation for both of us.
Yeah.
And there's no water splash up. It hasn't rained.
Yeah.
It just happens. Like sometimes you can't really control it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the reason that we don't have a lot of pest pressure right now is because we've given up control to the environment, right? And so I'm very fortunate that I have the pond now in the backyard, which brings in bird life at a higher rate than maybe it would if there was no water feature. And it's quite a nice water feature now. It's like very well planted out now, and you guys helped out with that. But what I've noticed is more species of bird of different sizes and style. So like some are ground foragers, some are hanging out on wires, some are in trees. And so, I mean, if you do the stats on some of these common bird species and how many pests they need to eat to survive, like even if you're talking like a bat will eat 2,000 insects every night. So if you had one bat in your garden, even one would cut down a significant amount of the pest pressure. So I guess what I'm saying is like, I'm curious if you've seen this in your garden, like bringing in the ability for the higher level species, right?
Absolutely.
It's just like they will not let things get out of check.
Yeah, and I've actually noticed that as well. I've had a lot of small birds, and I'll see them jump around on my like leaves of my plants.
Yeah.
And peck at something. There's no fruit. They're not eating the leaves.
Nothing.
They're eating the bugs. And then the other thing I have recently, this year there's been a crazy amount of hawks, and I could hear them calling.
They're right near your house.
They sit on my telephone poles, like 2 or 3 of them. Sometimes they sit on my trellis. And yesterday I was walking out in the garden, and I saw this hawk swoop down right next to my corn patch, fly off, and it had a mouse in its mouth.
No way.
And I was like, dude.
You saw it?
Yeah. I wish I could have captured it.
That would have been so cool.
But between like dogs, wild cats, and these falcons, and then little birds, they've solved most of my problems. And by doing nothing, essentially creating a space for them to be able to come in and not shoo them away.
That's it.
Spray anything. And it is scary, of course. I think both of us gave up like this idea of control, like in the past couple of years. And I think we've both seen a huge benefit from it. It's also cheaper.
Well, it's way cheaper. It saves you time. It saves you time. But also, I was just chatting with a podcast guest, and we were talking about birds in the environment. And the wild part about it is like, it is a build it and they will come. And it's in the way in which you build will bring a specific species in. So like if you don't have red or bright tubular flowers, your hummingbird population just won't be as high. They might be around, but the fact that, let's say I have the pond and then I also have some tubular flowers hanging around, like the hollyhocks, for example, they'll be around. What's been interesting is I also have a hummingbird feeder. They don't touch it. They really don't. And because they're getting enough from the rest of the environment. And then another weird thing is like, if you plant stuff and then don't solve the pest problem, like the aphids, right? And you mentioned this in a recent video you did where you're like, my determinate tomatoes have aphids and I don't even care. And it's because you saw ladybug larvae on, which is obviously not a bird, but similar idea.
Yeah. 2 weeks later, it was covered in ladybugs and almost all the aphids were gone. And now the plant looks really healthy. It's starting to ripen fruit. And I basically it's just scary because the initial desire is to overreact. Yeah. And a lot of times as gardeners, we want to do something. Yeah. But I think sometimes the best part of gardening is to just be passive and let the like garden speak to you, essentially. Yeah, I would say like the hardest part about it is when you start out, you don't know what to do. You don't know like what's going to actually bring things in. So the general rules of thumb would be keep the ground covered to some degree,
right? Variety of size of plant, right? Size and color and shape. And so, trees, but also shrubs, but also ground cover, but also edible vegetables and flowers and stuff.
Places you never mess with.
Yeah. Places you don't mess with too much. And then I would say, I think everyone needs some kind of water feature, even if it's just like a 5-gallon bucket with something to circulate the water.
Yeah, I actually want to build one of those, like little solar fountain pumps.
Yeah, that just goes like...
Exactly. Yeah. And then because I was watering and a bird just flew up and started like trying to drink some water off the hose. Yeah. So yeah, totally.
Well, dude, I noticed this year, to your point about the small birds, we planted a ton of sunflowers this year. Sunflowers... Yeah, the sunflower leaves are really hardy, in that stem that before it starts to branch out is really, so they'll sit right there, and they actually will eat the leaf. I don't think there's a bug there. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But what I noticed is providing that and then letting things like bachelor buttons or alyssum just get a bit crazy. I've noticed the small little tiny like finches or whatever, they'll take just refuge in there. So I'll be walking through the garden. I won't even know they're in there.
Yeah.
And then like 7 will fly out. And I'm like, well, they were doing something.
Absolutely.
They weren't just like sleeping in there or something.
Yeah.
Maybe
actually,
they were,
the sunflowers are interesting because I've been leaving mine. Usually I used to cut them down when they start to die back or like give the heads to the chickens. I've been leaving them and covered in tiny birds.
Oh yeah.
I'll go out there. Yeah. The sunflower has 0 seeds left.
Yeah.
And they're just working their way down as they ripen, basically.
Paul on our team, Paul helps out in the garden. He cut down a branching sunflower that had basically been fully spent, but I was like, don't put it in the compost, just leave it on the ground. And then I would say about 20 of those small birds over the course of a week completely stripped it bare. But the cool part is they had a ton of different seeds that were like fully open. They got into them, but they can't get everything.
Yeah.
And that's how all the sunflowers even happened this past year, because we only planted 4 and there's like 12 in the garden, right? Yeah. And so that's how it happened. But summer's here, Jacques, and it is the perfect time to be chopping it up outdoors, cooking wise.
Yeah. I am all about outdoor cooking now. I am fully committed to wanting to cook like 50% of my meals outside this summer.
I agree with you completely. And I have the stacked setup. I have an overpowered setup. Not on purpose, guys, not on purpose. But what ended up happening is I got really excited about griddle top cooking.
He was all about the black.
Yeah, I went deep into the world of griddle top. I found like a couple YouTubers I liked, the Griddle Top King, like this sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And these are down and dirty dogs. Like these guys love to griddle, you know? And so I got really into the griddle stuff. And so I go out with my girlfriend. We go to a Home Depot or a Lowe's or whatever, wherever these are, buy a Blackstone. So I've got the griddle top cooking on propane, right? Then we work with Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, which you know.
Yep.
Probably the most sustainable brewery out there. And they send a big green egg.
Yeah. And you had a good experience with that, I think.
Oh, I got roasted and toasted. So I've only ever used the big green egg one time. And what ended up happening is I had a pork butt that I just had in the freezer, like deep freeze, you know, deep freeze. I was like, okay, Old Smoky's going to come out, you know, I'm put on my hat and I'm going to learn how to smoke. I did not know how to smoke. Charcoal fire, but like OG charcoal, not like, you know, like, the Kingsford
like
stuff.
Mesquite chunks.
Like real charcoal.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to get that hot. And I'm like, all right, I can see how the big green egg works. You like close the top and the heat and you smoke and you have this little top thing that lets out some heat so you can like modulate it and all that. And so I fire it up and you have to like let it get to heat, right? So I do that. I got the pork butt all like salted up and, you know, seasoned up.
Got the rub.
It's been rubbed up, right? And so then what happens is I open the top of the lid to peek in to see how hot it is, which is like so dumb because, and here's why. The little temperature gauge looked like it was at 0. It looked like it was at 0. Right. You remember?
Yeah, I remember you were telling it. Yeah.
And what happened is it was so hot, it went all the way around to 0 again. It was at 900.
900 is like...
And so I open it up and I wear contacts. So I open it up. I'm immediately blasted with hellfire just into my face, on my eyes, and onto my eyebrows and eyelashes. My eyelashes were gone. Most of them were gone. And then my eyebrows, I looked at them and it looked like I aged overnight because they were like really like roasted and singed, and I could smell my contacts. And so I was like, I need to get my contacts out of my eyes ASAP. Yeah. So I get those out, and for the rest of the night, I just don't feel good. You know?
You're like, I'm over it now.
Yeah. And I try to, so I'm like, well, it's hot, so I'm going to try to smoke this guy. Couldn't regulate the temperature. Overnight, it smoked, and basically like it did cook through.
Yeah.
But like the outside was really singed and the inside was just like not juicy enough. So it was kind of like salt pork, like cured sailor food or whatever. So that was my second experience. And then we both got
the Gosney Pizza Dome.
The Gosney Pizza Dome. Unsponsored, but they did send it out.
Yeah. Life changer.
It's changed our outdoor game. Absolutely changed it. And yours specifically.
Yeah. I think for us, like when we first got it, we were like, yeah, I mean, I love pizza. I love making pizza. I love eating pizza. I could eat pizza on the daily. So we were like, this is amazing. Like now we have a pizza oven. I've been annoying Katrina for 2 years now about getting a pizza oven. Yeah. But then what we discovered is that it's basically just an oven. Like it's an oven that gets up to 950 degrees. So we're roasting vegetables in there. We're baking. I'm going to try baking bread this weekend. We're making stuffed grape leaves in there, pizzas, anything you could possibly cook, like roasted peaches, smoked peaches, bananas, caramelized in there. Yeah. It's so much fun. And like for entertainment and also just for not heating the house up. I could sit outside, cook all day, but if I'm sitting over the stove in a kitchen,
you're like
just
sweating.
boring.
Yeah, you're sweating. Yeah. You feel confined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's birds flying around. Like I could stare at the garden. Like
that's
it's
the thing,
amazing
because you can move that dome wherever you want. Yeah. And so like I did a bunch of pizza in it. Yeah. You've done more than me.
I think I've cooked like 60 pizzas.
You've cooked so many pizzas. I've cooked, I don't know, 15 maybe, because you do the sourdough pizza dough, right? Which is just a killer recipe.
Absolutely.
I think it's better than normal pizza dough.
Like, it's like not even fair to compare the pizza doughs anymore. Like
I don't think it is.
They're like a grocery store tomato versus like homegrown tomato.
I even think it's more extreme. I think it's like a tomato that's homegrown versus one you found on the ground, like at the mall or something, you know, like it's just not even close. Yeah. And so obviously been doing roasted peaches. Like you mentioned, we had a big peach boom this year at the homestead of these Arctic Star peaches, or no, Ava's Pride peaches is what they were. Right. And we just had too many. And so my girlfriend a while ago was doing this recipe with apples where you'd cut them in half and you'd make like an oat sugar and butter mixture and then put it on top. So you basically do like a healthier version of a crumble.
Personal pie.
Exactly. You don't like slather it with sugar, you know? Yeah. And you do that in the normal oven. But what we did recently is we did that with the peaches, and you put it in the hot oven at like 750 plus, and you get that little like toasty smoke sort of vibe. You get that caramelized vibe, almost like a little brulee.
Amazing. Yeah.
And that was fire.
Yeah. And I think like the thing to appreciate about outdoor cooking is that since you're doing it like probably near your garden, if you are, is that you could just go like, oh, you know what? I want a sprig of rosemary. And just take a couple steps, grab some rosemary, throw it in there. It's just like a different experience. And to me, I feel more connected to my outdoor space. And it just makes me want to garden even more so that I can have more stuff to cook and experience.
I think to me, it's all stems down from like early video games where the only ones I would play would be like Harvest Moon, Sim City, any of these games where you like transmute natural resources into like final products. I just want to play those games, you know?
Civilization till 3 a.m.
Dude, Civilization, any of these games, all I'm trying to do is take some materials and turn them into another one. Yeah. A little alchemy, you know? And that's to me what the cooking has done.
Yeah, it's more primal, like, I don't know what that means, but it's like, I just feel more connected.
Well, it is more primal because
less ingredients.
Evolutionary history, we did not have an indoor to cook in. Right. You cooked either not at all, then cooking was discovered. Right. And then you cook over a fire, maybe. Yeah. You know, and that's pretty much how it would work. Any go-to non-pizza recipes in the Gosney? Garden fresh.
Garden fresh. So, I mean, honestly, my absolute favorite thing to do is to just pluck a bunch of zucchini, some of those fresh onions, some Roma tomatoes, cut them all in half. Yeah. Throw them in a sheet pan. And then put them in there. And actually, I've been using wood fire and I just let it get a little bit smoky. Mm-hmm. Everything gets caramelized and it turns into this kind of smoky, caramelized flavor, even the squash. Mm-hmm. And then we blend that all up and we make our own like garden tomato sauce. Yeah. But also has vegetables because we put it in the squash. We put it in some of these onions. It's
almost like a chutney or something.
Yeah, but fully blended, it tastes like this. And even a spicy pepper, just one. And then you have like the smoky, spicy, tomatoey, squashy. It's just like bunch of olive.
You're gonna have to name it.
Yeah,
you have to start naming some recipes.
We have to start actually providing.
Jacques likes, you know, sloppy vegetable surprise or something like that. You know.
And honestly, if you are interested in cooking outdoors, though, like not because I know we just mentioned a bunch of like more
higher
bigger
end stuff.
steps.
Yeah.
The first thing I did is I just bought an induction burner.
Yeah.
Plugged it in outside and I just started cooking outside.
Because
these simple meals that require one pan, it's just better outside. It's more fun.
It's so an induction cooktop's like what, $150 maybe?
Even the first one I got was like a budget one for like $50.
$50.
And it lasted for 2 years, but whatever. Like it's a good way to get started and it's just more fun. I highly recommend everyone try it, especially in the summertime where you know the house is going to be too hot to turn on that oven.
Just think about summer vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a vibes-based universe.
Al fresco. I don't know what that means.
Al fresco, baby. Al fresco.
And actually in the background, I think I hear some peeping in the distance. Do you want to talk about that?
There's a couple peeping Toms in the background.
Toms, hopefully not.
Literally just today, we received 4 new hens here at the Epic Homestead. Why don't we talk about the varieties, the breeds?
Yeah,
I always say varieties because I'm so plant
vegetable,
the cultivars of hens.
The cultivars of hens.
So we got the hens from the same place as before. Our friend Renee of Backyard Chickies. And she came down today with a black Australorp, which
I have one of those.
You have. Yeah. What's yours named?
Ours is called Nightfall. It's a pretty silly name.
Nightfall?
But she's like fully black. Like she is
Wasn't it called Midnight?
Midnight's the other one, or Black Copper Morans. They're both,
okay.
Honestly, not my favorite names, but I didn't have any hand in any of the chicken names.
Nightfall.
I wasn't allowed.
So black Australorp, which is it's a hybrid mix between an Orpington and I forgot the other one, but whatever, an Austro something.
Yeah, and I actually just remembered it's like the highest laying breed, I think.
Yeah, it's a layer.
It's from Australia.
It's a layer. And the reason why I had to get that one is because I also have the lowest laying breed. I also got the old tank Buff Brahma, which is the one, it's an absolute beast. Yeah. And just the hen is huge. The rooster is an absolute machine. Have you seen the rooster?
I've seen pictures and they look like a cartoon.
I'll tell you this right now. I'm 6'4", way a little heavier than I might even like. I'm in the 2s, right?
Yeah.
If a Buff Brahma rooster came at me, I'm not fighting it.
No, you're out?
I'm out, dude. I'm out. That thing is way too big. And it's
a little talon.
It comes at you in this like swag. Weird. It has a certain like aggressive swag to it where you're like, when you're walking
crossing the street.
That's the thing is like, when you can tell someone's just unhinged and you just don't know what they're gonna do. That's what a Buff Brahma rooster is. But anyways, I have the hen.
Yeah.
And she's a week old right now, and you can even see the feathers because they have the feathers on their talons or whatever. Yep. Those are coming in already.
It looks kind of funny right now.
It looks goofy. It's gonna look goofy regardless.
But that's great.
But the thing that I didn't want, and I'm gonna keep the silky slander going on the podcast. I hate silkies, and you won't catch me having a silky in my garden. Silky to me, meat bird, because I'm not gonna be. I don't like them.
You're out.
I don't like them. I don't like those, and I don't like Polish.
I don't even remember what that one is. Is that also like a crazy looking?
Imagine a hen that looks dumb. That's what it looks like.
Okay.
Well, let's keep going with the breeds. So I got a Jubilee Orpington.
Nice.
So that's basically just sort of a more colorful version of, let's say, the buff.
Reds?
Yeah, there's like some whites and some reds in there.
Right.
It kind of looks like a explosion of color, Then I have a Splash Lace Wyandotte. So instead of a gold or silver, it has a bit of a sort of splash of colors. So really only 2 new breeds, and 2 of them are varieties of breeds I already have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think I remember the other interesting thing you mentioned with like the Buff Brahmas is that they lay less overall, but they lay more in the colder period.
Yes.
So you actually will get like maybe a better balance of eggs throughout the years.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing with all this selection, right?
The problem though is that the Australorps are almost at an egg a day at peak, right? So they're at like 330.
Yeah.
I think a year. And I believe the Brahmas are at like 150 to 160 or something like that. So it's less than half. And so you're right. I think the reason why they lay into the colder parts of the year, I think, is because they're more insulated as a bird, and they perhaps don't get the seasonal signal to like slow down sooner or something.
Yeah.
But either way, like that's a freeloader in the coop for sure. Come on, it's like half, and it's like a big old tank. But you know what I did hear is that if you do get a rooster, which maybe if I get bigger property one time in my life, I'll get a rooster. The Buff Brahma roosters will go to war. Like nothing's getting through them. Like if a hawk's in the air, the Brahma will do like a specific call, and then it'll look up and it'll be like, "Yo, come at me, bro." Yeah, exactly. And the hawk, I think even the hawk's like, I don't think I can literally pick him up. He's too big, Yeah. What's going on with your flock?
I'm still at 6. And I'm probably sticking to 6 for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Because it's like, at this point, I think we're at the perfect balance of how many eggs we're getting and how many, we want to get. And also at this point, I just found like it's very manageable at 6. Like it's not like it's really any harder the more you go, I guess, but they just have like a nice kind of mentality together. They all seem fine with each other. There's no drama.
Yeah.
And they've just been getting along great. And like between that and actually my chicken orchard is like really starting to fill in now. I'm actually really excited because like now I'm going to actually install irrigation.
His fingers are crossed behind his back. That's a lie.
Let's just say the PVC is there.
Yeah.
It's been there for 3 months, but the potential is there. And so now, like, once that's irrigated and I have the chickens pooping everywhere, it's going to be like a fertilization machine where they're going to have enough water, enough fertility. And I'm really hoping that next year I'm going to have a ton of fruit out of that chicken orchard. And I might add like 2 more trees in the corner there, but probably no more chickens for the foreseeable future.
So here's what I wanted to run by you. So if you guys don't remember what Jacques talking about with his chicken orchard is he created an outdoor run that he netted.
Yeah.
And then he planted in our Birdie's tree surrounds. He put, you have like a loquat, you have citrus, mulberry, stuff like that. Yeah. And it's provided a nice amount of shade. Now, my coop is set up in a different way. It sort of doesn't have the ability to do that design wise.
Yeah, and sunlight.
Yeah, and sunlight wise. But I was thinking, Jacques, on the fence line, I could perhaps put something climbing.
Oh, yeah.
And just like throw something climbing over. And maybe, because Chetty, our silver lace wyandotte, has learned to jump the outdoor run. She can actually fly up about 7 feet or something.
Yeah, easy.
And I was like, well, you either have to put a top over it now or maybe grow something. So I was like, maybe I can grow something there. That'll prevent her from wanting to come up. We'll have to see.
It'd be cool even to put like some trees on the outside of the fence, or maybe that's where the berries go. Yeah. Because there's nowhere really for them to like take over from that point.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But yeah, it's really fun having like the complete system like that.
Yeah.
And also the fact that they just all get along. So I'm like, I'm not going to add anymore.
Yeah. Mine, I think it's hard to tell because Rufio is the cream leg bar, which is a very unique breed. They run a little bit slimmer. They're not really, they certainly wouldn't be a meat bird because they're very slender.
Yeah.
They're more of like a forager bird and they're sort of independent. And I think the other hens are less that way and they sort of like pick on her a little bit.
I see.
And so she kind of gets bullied, but I don't know, she handles it. Tools wise, like, is there anything that you've added, improved to the coop?
Yeah. So actually, this year I made a couple adjustments.
Yeah.
So last year, what happened was our chicken coop obviously has a roof. And then there's also like an enclosed run that sometimes we just keep them in if we're gone for a long time. And that didn't have a roof. And so what happened last year is that during the rain, everything got so wet that there really wasn't any dry space and they couldn't dust bathe and they got mites.
Yeah.
And that's
gross.
Awful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to talk about it anymore, but it's really gross. And we treated it. So this year we actually put a roof on the enclosed run. So even if it rains a lot and even if we're not locking them in there, there's always some amount of dry space for them, which is great. And then I've also actually just recently, I used one of those Maker Pipe, like 6-in-1 Birdie's Bed trellis kits.
Yeah.
And I built a shade cloth box around their nesting box. Because it's been getting so much sun that we were just worried it's too hot, especially if there's a broody chicken who sits in there all day.
She'd get baked.
Yeah. So we threw like full shade cloth over that.
Yeah.
And it's been really nice because now the box stays nice and cool. And like, I'm not worried about like a broody chicken literally baking in there.
No kidding, right?
That's been a really nice little feature update.
The thing I did, nothing too crazy besides just building the outdoor expansion.
Yeah.
Because my coop, it has the hen house elevated. And there's a 6x18 indoor run, which in theory is enough.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give them access to sunlight and forage and stuff. So you and I actually built the outdoor expansion. But then we planted just some like, I don't know, alyssum and calendula and flax and stuff like that. Amaranth right in front of that. And so they'll actually trim the backside of that bed completely flat and they get to eat it. And I think it just keeps them a little more active.
Passion fruit.
Yeah, I could do passion fruit there too, but I have it on the cistern.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's a lot going on there. But
yeah,
it's weird to talk about fall right now because it's the peak of summer, but you do actually have to plan that way in the garden, obviously. Are there any things, Jacques, that you are going to be building out for fall, like major projects?
I mean, the ones that you've already been hassling me on, which I needed the hassling on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I am finishing the raised bed plan. That's actually going to probably go in within literally the next 2 weeks maximum, hopefully within a week. Irrigation will be tied up. So then the next thing is I actually do really want to think about a protected area, like a greenhouse, whether that's DIY or not, because I just really want to push the season further. Obviously in San Diego, it's a little easier, but I like to start all my seeds outside. And after seeing your seeds this spring in the greenhouse, that actually sold me.
Did it really?
Like, because I have like a pop-up greenhouse, but I didn't get nearly the same result as your seedlings in the greenhouse. Like, that was incredible to me how much faster they grew.
The crazy part too is like I always had the San Diego chill of just starting them outdoors with no protection whatsoever. And while it does work, like they'll sprout, I have to agree with you. When we put them in the greenhouse, or even just seeing yours in the, that's a very budget affordable greenhouse, like the sort of pop-up one, it's just way better. I mean, it's just way better. Absolutely. And then the plant vigor, like we talked about in the first episode this week, especially with something like a tomato, your pumpers and your clappers or whatever, crankers, they put them in the ground perfect. Why would you not? Right. Yeah. And so that to me has been huge. I am going to be pimping out the greenhouse a little bit. Yeah. So we're going to be adding some lights for the evening. If you want to have like a party out there or something like that, rebuilding some of the benching so that you're really maximizing the space. If you're going to invest in a greenhouse, whatever the budget, you really want the square footage in there to be absolutely maxed out. Yeah. So that means double depth shelves, double decker shelves, different sort of electronics in there that might help with conditioning and stuff like that. And I would say landscaping around. I'm really into, as we did the pond project this year, we like finally fixed the outside of the pond. Yes. Because the inside looked amazing. Yeah. The outside looked like
neglected.
Yeah, I think Greg from Aquascapes, he said like you have like a Ferrari pond and like a minivan, like a broke down pickup truck exterior. And I was like, okay,
thanks.
Message received, But he wasn't wrong.
Yeah,
he wasn't wrong. And so same with the greenhouse, like it's sitting on those 4x4s.
Yep.
But I want to put it in its place by growing around it and making it feel like it's affixed to the earth via not only the soil and the actual structure, but just like the environment.
Just kind of blend it in.
Blend it.
Yeah.
Blend it. Put it in place.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm curious, how are you going to do your greenhouse?
I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. If I don't find one that I really like, then I'll probably just DIY something small just to kind of get me through this next year until I like really think about it. But honestly, I would like something a little bigger because to me, what's really exciting in San Diego is that it doesn't get that cold, but you still don't have that much sun. And it gets cold enough that things like peppers don't want to produce. But I feel like in a greenhouse, even if it's all passive, you could probably get some peppers growing throughout the year. Definitely cherry tomatoes, because I could even get those outside, even though they're slow. Yeah. So I'd love to have more of those fruits year round. Because like I'll get tons of kale, broccoli, cauliflower.
That's no problem.
Yeah, outside, easy.
We mastered that this year, honestly.
Absolutely nailed it. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure I get that timing right soon and you start those seeds. But I would love to be able to actually grow some more, like even like the more common things, like one cherry tomato plant would be amazing. But speaking of like getting ready for the next season, even though we're in it, the thing I wanted to do the most next year is I want more onions. Onions.
Someone got onion influenced by me.
Yeah, I did. And here's the thing. You've got me twice now on basics. So the first time I was like, why would I grow a potato? I'll go to the store and buy a 10-pound bag. Easy.
Yeah.
And then we grew potatoes, like a small amount. And I was like, these are really good.
Then Potato Daddy activated.
I was like, Potato Daddy was right all along. I shouldn't have ever doubted him. They are worth it. Like some things don't seem worth it. And I think you could think of that about anything, but literally think of any single thing you've ever harvested from your garden. It's always better.
It's always better.
Even a potato is going to be better. The onions blew me away.
The onions this year, I think were a beneficiary of the weird season that we had because they had way longer to accrue just overall size and mass before the temps and the daylight hours triggered the bulbing process. So I think they had just like more fundamental energy production possible or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously variety matters.
Sure.
Those that ask how I grew the big boys, it was really the yellow Granax onions.
And you started that from seed, I think.
Some from seed, some from starts.
Slips or whatever.
Yeah, some from, honestly, it was a mix of all. Some from pure seed, some from seed that I then split out in the seed cells.
Right.
And then some from seedlings that I split out from the packs at the nursery. Or we ordered some as well.
Yeah.
But just crazy production. And I kind of was in your same camp. not with potatoes ever, but with onions, I was in your camp because I was like, they're very long season growers, way longer than potatoes. You have to get the right variety. You really do. You can't mess that one up.
That's not an option.
And there are a lot of ways for it to go sideways. And so maybe it's just not worth it. And then this year I was again convinced that it is. Go ahead.
Two things convinced me about it.
Okay.
First, you get a lot of onions from a small amount of space. Like you could really cram them in there. And even like just 3 inches apart and harvest every other one in the spring as spring onions and still get an onion crop. The second thing was how incredibly sweet a fresh onion from the garden was. Speaking of the pizza oven, those fresh onions cut up, thrown in there, a little smoke, caramelized, olive oil. Man, I didn't know they could be that sweet and savory and delicious all at the same time. And I was like, I've never actually bought an onion that's been close to this.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, now I get it. Onions are great too. So next year I want to have I want to be able to pull out like 200 onions.
Here's the counterintuitive thing that I've always thought about the basics, right? Because you're totally right. Like you can just go buy potatoes and onions. It's actually really cheap.
Easy.
But they're also not that hard to grow, specifically potatoes.
True.
But where I get the unlock is I go, well, they store for a while.
Yeah.
So if you grow a lot in an easy way, it's low effort during the season. And then lately, since I've been on this 75 hard fitness challenge, I'm eating a lot of potatoes. So I'm like, I actually Googled how to make the like crispy potato chunks.
Nice.
So real quick little teaser for you guys. So what you do is, maybe you knew this because you're more the chef, but what you do is
eat a lot of potatoes.
You chop them up in a uniform structure, right? So like take a wedge and cut that wedge in half.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that type of shape. You boil them in salt water with some baking soda. Then you drain that off. You let them dry. And then you put olive oil and salt in. And if you want some herbs or whatever, you have to shake the pot. So you rough the edges up because they've been fully cooked. So the edges, that graininess starts to form at the edge.
It's like almost like a tiny layer of mashed potato attached.
That's
to
exactly.
Yeah.
Then you bake that at 450 and rotate every 20 minutes until it gets crispy. And then you really do get the crispy exterior and the soft interior.
Yeah. Like crunch.
Like restaurant style.
Yeah.
That's how that happens. And I figured it out. And so now
you know.
Potato Daddy Reborn. Potato Daddy Part 2.
It's really easy to eat potatoes. I'll tell you that much. I love me a good potato.
Well, that was my whole thing when I did that survival challenge. I was like, potatoes is the only thing I can grow fast.
Yeah.
So any parting thoughts for the fall for people?
Parting thoughts for the fall. If you are somewhere where you can grow over the winter, try to figure out, look up in your area, when should I start my fall crops? Because people always ask us, how did you grow Brussels sprouts in San Diego? The secret is short day variety. And you have to get it started in summer and transplant it in fall. So if you miss that window, it's just going to get too hot. You're not going to get the crop you want. So for us, what we've learned is you have to start your seedlings early. You have to get them in the ground in fall so that by the time winter turns into spring, they're going to be cranking and sizing. Yeah, that is the best tip that we have for those of you in more non-standard growing climates like ours is you really have to you have to say what does the plant need and when does my climate offer it that? Yeah. Because for us, it's totally counterintuitive, and that's why cabbages, broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels this year were huge. Yeah. And I'm laughing right now because I'm walking around the garden. I see these cabbage looper butterflies or moths flying around. Nothing for you. Go for it. Nothing for you right now. There is nothing to eat. You're about to starve, fool. Yeah. Anyways, well, thank you so much, guys, for listening to this first inaugural video podcast with Jacques. You can check it out on the Beet podcast channel on YouTube. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing.